We talk on this podcast about influencers in the age of social media, but there's a much longer established politically powerful form of media consumed by tens of millions of Americans each week, and that's conservative talk radio. Ever since the radio airwaves were deregulated, first with the end of the Fairness Act in 1987 and then the 1996 Telecommunications Act, massive companies like Clear Channel have been able to buy and own multiple stations with an exclusively conservative ideological slant, usually to the right of Fox News. Clear Channel is today called iHeartMedia and owns 800 American radio stations. The echo chamber, often referred to, that this has created is a clear precursor to the polarizing algorithms we talk about now on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. No surprise then that COVID denialism and anti-vax attitudes amongst Republicans have been driven not only by huge TV personalities like Tucker Carlson, but also by popular conservative talk radio hosts. Some of these hosts are now themselves dying from COVID. So here's a short list. On August 4th, Florida conservative radio host Dick Farrell died at 65 from COVID-19 complications. In a Facebook post just a month earlier, he had called Anthony Fauci a power-tripping freak, asking, "Why would you take a vax promoted by people who lied to you all along about masks, where the virus came from, and the death toll?" Politico reports that once infected, he did change his tune and urged a longtime friend to get vaccinated, saying he regretted his own choice not to do so. Next up, Jimmy DeYoung died on August 15th at 81 years old. He broadcast his right-wing Christian show Prophecy Today from Tennessee and thought COVID was a form of government control and the vaccine was not to be trusted. Phil Valentine, a conservative radio host also in Tennessee, wrote in a blog post that his chances of dying from COVID were way less than 1%, and then died at 61 on August 21st. On his show, he had repeatedly downplayed the need for people to get vaccinated. And again, to his credit, Valentine changed his tune while in the hospital, saying he would more vigorously advocate for vaccination once back on the air. He died less than a month later. His brother Mark told CNN that Phil regretted being responsible for other people not getting vaccinated. On August 28th, Florida conservative radio host Mark Bernier, who had referred to himself as Mr. Anti-Vax, died at 65. He lost a 3-week hospital battle to COVID. On Twitter, Bernier had compared the government telling people to get vaccinated, you guessed it, to the Nazis. Now, there are also many other recent COVID deaths amongst anti-vax and COVID denialist figures, including public officials like Commissioner Tommy Peake in Oklahoma, GOP chair in Greenville, South Carolina, Presley Stutz, who was 64, and from his deathbed said that COVID was a deadly bioweapon deployed on America by enemies foreign and probably domestic. Stutz remained ardently anti-vaccine and anti-mask until his death. Councilman H. Scott Apley from Dickinson, Texas, died at just 45 from COVID after mocking it and sharing anti-vax and anti-mask posts. 57-year-old Georgia Police Captain Joe Manning refused the vaccine and took ivermectin instead on social media, urging his followers to stock up on it from the local feed and seed store. Thank you very much, Brett Weinstein. We should also mention Caleb Wallace, a young man of just 30 years old from Texas, father of 3 young children with another baby on the way, who stayed home for 4 days, self-medicating with vitamin C, zinc, aspirin, and ivermectin, so almost the Rogan protocol, right? Before being rushed to the emergency room. He had helped organize the Freedom Rally in San Angelino on July 4th, and then died 55 days later. Now, that's a long and somewhat laborious list that I wanted to share for the impact of what's really going on here. That's all just from the month of August. Conservative radio hosts and public officials and one protest organizer. I had said last week on social media that we're in an inevitable countdown now toward one of our conspiritualist influencers suffering the same tragic fate. We're only 1 degree of separation from that right now. Frequent Sasha Stone collaborator Robert David Steele just died at 69. He and Stone organized the 84-stop Arise USA tour, which was slated to run from May 24th to August 28th, where they and a cast of speakers urged the crowds, who seem to have averaged out at around an underwhelming 200 and often quite a lot less than that per stop, to fight for their freedoms against vaccines, masks, quarantine measures, and the evil cabal of child-sacrificing pedophile elites who run the world, and who also supposedly rigged the 2020 election. Now, the exact day of Steele's death is not being reported anywhere, but most outlets are saying he died last week. His death is not mentioned on the Arise USA tour website, but if you dig around for it, there is a press release saying that the tour's last date was on August 17th, 11 days early, and with 4 stops still remaining. It also says that he was hospitalized on August 16th and ends by expressing how excited they all are for the Arise USA tour in 2022. Now, I, for one, will be watching Sasha Stone carefully now, as being on a tour bus and sharing a stage with Steele for 2 months makes his exposure to the virus really likely. Steele prided himself on being the first to publicly call COVID a hoax. He was a former CIA agent and a longtime influential far-right and anti-Semitic conspiracy theory who most recently had vocally supported QAnon, along with his friend Sasha Stone. In 2017, he famously told Alex Jones on InfoWars that NASA was running a child slave colony on Mars. On August 18th, Robert David Steele's last ever blog post, which appears to have since been deleted, featured an image of him hooked up to a hospital ventilator. He wrote, "I will not take the vaccination, though I did test positive for whatever they're calling COVID."
Why did you include the child slave colony on Mars? That's pretty common knowledge at this point. Seems like an outlier.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some details there that really get far out. So I left that stuff out. But the child sex colony.
We'll do a bonus episode on that.
Actually, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Reading this list along with you as you were going over it, it brought to mind the fact that being in this industry of wellness and yoga, I mean, for so long it's been called preventive medicine, and essentially that's also what a vaccine is. It's preventive medicine that doesn't operate that much differently than a lot of the stuff that has been touted in yoga and wellness circles. Obviously, yes, vaccination is a different process, but
yeah,
the ideology behind it is exactly the same. A little bit of something arms you against the real problem. Just like, lifting weights, you tear your muscles a little bit so they get stronger. And, you're doing the same thing with your immune system when you take a vaccination.
Yeah, essentially vaccines do what homeopathy falsely claims to do in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I've said that before. Samuel Hahnemann was super excited when Edward Jenner's work and then Pasteur's work bore fruit, because he saw that as proof that homeopathy worked. Mm-hmm. And I've talked to homeopathists who don't know that. So, it's the same underlying reasoning behind it. And again, it's been with us for thousands of years. At least, the earliest instance from China comes about 1100 years ago, but there is, it probably predates that as well. The idea that a little bit of something, the first instance was to cure rabies, to take a little bit of the dog's brain that infected you and put that on your skin. So it's been around for a very long time. And it's really, I'm at a point now where, especially you see the cognitive dissonance that's coming out of Rogan's post, where, a lot of his acolytes are like anti-big pharma, and then here your God is saying, I took everything that big pharma had and I put it in my body except for the vaccine. Yeah. But all of these other things, which are indicative of the pharmaceutical industry, I'm fine taking as long as I'm okay. And I don't know how long this dissonance can last, how long you can continue making excuses which essentially contradict what you've been espousing for years or decades. Mm-hmm. It's just that you're not getting it packaged at Whole Foods or your Erewhon, your local holistic